Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the match preview. We are on YouTube as well as on our podcast channel. I'm Andrew Musgrove, and this week joined by Sam Mulliner as Gibbo is off on his jollies. So no Gibbo this week. I know we had a few complaints last week when we didn't have an Everton preview. So I can only send out my apologies again that there's no Gibbo this week. But Sam has filled in and Sam's back. There's no survey this week, Sam. We've got you on because we want your view on Newcastle United, the wonders of Eddie Howe, and maybe as well, so you can have a little bit of a laugh at Sunday or Saturday's opponents, Aston Villa.
Yeah, no pressure. I've just got to fill into Gibbo's rather sizable shoes.
Well, we talk a lot about fan clubs on this channel, especially the Miguel Almiron fan club, and I know you're going to have your say about your membership in a moment. But I also got a comment on Monday's podcast from some Norwegian fans who were very angry there was no Gibbo preview for the Everton game. So goodness knows what I'm going to get in the mailbag next week. I mean, it's a good job I'm off for a few weeks. So I'm sure hopefully their anger will have subsided when they realise there is no Gibbo this week and they've only got you.
I hope I can quell Scandinavia's doubt.
So those listening, you will recognise Sam's voice. Of course, he is from Newcastle Fans TV with his very own podcast as well. Just plug that, Sam. We'll get that out of the way first of all.
The Greenwood and Mulliner show on Newcastle Fans TV. Please do give a listen, subscribe, and rate 5 stars and all that. Carry on. An interview with a famous face every Tuesday.
Yeah, the second best Newcastle United podcast to tune into. Oh, he's not bitten, has he?
First the worst, second the best.
Newcastle Villa this weekend. Then always a game I look forward to. There's a few games as a fan that I really do look forward to, and this is one of them. The other one seems to be Everton. I don't know why. I like when Newcastle face Everton and Aston Villa. I don't know whether it's I don't really like the clubs very much from a fan perspective, from a journalist perspective. Very interesting what's going on down at Villa. Steven Gerrard was seen as the man that some thought Newcastle should have appointed instead of Eddie Howe. They've now gone and got the man that looked like he was going to be appointed ahead of Eddie Howe in Unai Emery. So there's lots of interesting little side stories to this game on Saturday. And, there's all that history as well. And, some people think it's drummed up, but, I think a lot of people are still very hurt by the banner that was unveiled at Villa Park back when Newcastle were relegated, when Alan Shearer was manager. So it's always a bit of a tasty game, this one.
Yeah, I'm like you as well. It's one of the first games I always look out for. It's the one I want to win most. My wife is an Aston Villa supporter. I live about an hour away from Villa Park. All the in-laws are Villa fans, so this is the one I really want to win. I'm gutted that they sacked Steven Gerrard, because I think it would have been a foregone conclusion Saturday if Gerrard was still in charge. But I just got a feeling now that things aren't quite so simple. It's not going to be as straightforward as many people think, despite us coming off the back of a fantastic victory at Spurs.
But I think Newcastle have got the momentum, and that counts for a lot in football, that wave of confidence. And yes, I know Aston Villa won 4-0 and they scored as many goals under their caretaker manager as they had done in 409 minutes under Steven Gerrard. So yeah, massive improvement. But sometimes you get that, don't you? You get that kind of when the chains are off and there's just kind of this release and there's a bit of freedom. But Brentford are one of those sides. They put in a good performance once every few games, and then you look at how they beat Manchester United comfortably, and then they've gone this horrible run of results. Newcastle thumped them. If Aston Villa had gone out and beaten a Brighton, perhaps, or a team that is around there, then I'd be a little bit more fearful. But I just think with Newcastle on this run of form, with the results they've got, I'm backing Newcastle to win this game.
I mean, I hope you're right, but look, Aaron Danks is the caretaker there at Villa at the moment. He wasn't Gerrard's man. He's very much like our Graham Jones, and that he was there pre-Gerrard. He spent some time in and around the England setup. So I really don't think this is a foregone conclusion. I mean, don't get me wrong, we should win. We should be looking to win every home game. We should go all season unbeaten at home. St James's Park is a fortress again. But Villa aren't a bad side. it's no coincidence that things started to go wrong for Steven Gerrard when Michael Beale left, his assistant, who's now thriving at QPR and turned the Wolves job down. Obviously, I hear certain things because I'm in deep in enemy territory where I live. So, Steven Gerrard was very, very reliant on Michael Beale in and around the training ground. So it comes as no surprise that, as I say, things went sour when he left, and it just goes to show how successful Beale's been at QPR, as I say. But this is a game we should be looking to win. Villa aren't a bad side. It was a close game at the back end of last season when we got the 1-0 with a Trippier free kick and another resolute defensive display. There's some good players on paper that we're going to be facing, but the momentum, the rhythm, hopefully with a good week's 6 days rest now, that the fatigue in the legs would have eased slightly, because I can't see how making too many changes for Saturday's game should everyone be fit. But this is a game I want to win more than any.
Yeah, and we'll get onto the potential team, but I agree, it doesn't change your winning side, so you can't see too many changes unless they're forced upon him. But just going back to Steven Gerrard, Sam, when he went to Aston Villa, as I've mentioned, a lot of pundits pointed out their view that he was a better manager than Eddie Howe. Newcastle should have gone after him as opposed to Howe. I wasn't in that camp. By no means did I think it would go as it has done for Steven Gerrard, Aston Villa. I thought he would do a decent job. I actually thought Newcastle and Aston Villa wouldn't be too far apart in terms of league position and going forward. That obviously hasn't worked out. What did you first of all make of the comments surrounding Gerrard and Howe when the appointments first were made, and how it's gone since?
Ridiculous. I mean, look, there was a few lads in NFTV in our group that wanted Gerrard and thought he was the answer, that we should have bought him out from Rangers and got him in the door sooner. He's never been for me. I mean, look, okay, he won the league in Scotland, but Neil Lennon won the treble in Scotland and couldn't do a job at Bolton Wanderers. So I don't think you can read too much. I mean, no disrespect to the Scottish League, but we all know it's not the strongest. You've one real team to beat all season, haven't you? So it comes of no surprise how Steven Gerrard's managerial career has turned out, really. He's not really paid his dues in the lower leagues like Eddie Howe has done. I don't think he's as much of a student of the game as Eddie Howe, in that we know Howe took a year out. He went to Atletico Madrid, learned some stuff off Simeone and got some more experience and a wealth of new knowledge under his belt, and he's come back stronger, obviously with a point to prove. And this will be, personally now, for Steven Gerrard, a huge test. Does he have the motivation to come again without his main assistant? I don't know. I just can't see it personally.
Do you think with Gerrard, there's a bit of living on that past reputation? The same with Lampard as well, because a lot of people made similar comments when Lampard went to Everton about how they've gone after Howe instead of Lampard, and it's like, well, these two haven't really achieved much, and it does seem to me that someone that sets Eddie Howe aside is the fact that, like you say, he's had to work his way up to where he is now. He puts in all the effort, and he's not been this world-class player, because let's make no mistake, Gerrard and Lampard were two of the best midfielders this country's ever seen. But it does seem to me that they often live on that past reputation as a player, and we know the results have proved that holds nothing when it comes to being a manager.
Yeah, good. The old adage, isn't there? Good players don't always make good managers, unless you're Pep Guardiola, who was obviously class at playing and managing. The skill set doesn't always translate, does it? So, I mean, Lampard couldn't get Derby up. I mean, I would put Scott Parker. I know he's out of a job now after being sacked at Bournemouth. I'd still put Scott Parker ahead of Lampard and Gerrard in terms of managerial prowess, but it just doesn't surprise me. That just does not surprise me. I'd sooner have an Eddie Howe, Graham Potter look at his rise to prominence now, because he has paid his dues going all around Europe, Scandinavia. So it's going to be very interesting if Gerrard does come back. Obviously, he's more than young enough, but people were getting carried away saying I was just biding his time to get the Liverpool job.
I don't think that helps. That
no,
doesn't help.
of course it wouldn't. Of course it wouldn't help, but he's got a lot of rebuilding to do. It's not impossible, of course it's not, but he's got to come back and take a job in the Championship or something to rebuild.
And I think I know the answer to this, and I can probably hear. Well, once he asked this question, a lot of people will probably be throwing things at their speakers. Any moments in the last year where you kind of looked at Aston Villa and thought, "Oh goodness me, I wish we'd had Steven Gerrard in charge instead of Eddie Howe"?
No.
I thought that would be the answer. Everyone's going to say no to that. Isn't it? I mean, Eddie Howe's just done a remarkable job, hasn't he? It's been quite something. He's not even been in charge a year yet.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's interesting now that, I mean, look, anyone who watches NFTV knew that Unai Emery was my first choice when Steve Bruce left. But
I'm glad you brought that up because I had it in the bag there. I was just
I know you did. I know you would have done. I know you do your research, but yeah, I would have liked Unai Emery. Am I disappointed we didn't get him? No. It's one of them things. I thought at the time he would have been a good starting point, a good manager for a cup run. But Villa seem to be trying to make a bit of a B-Tech blueprint of Newcastle's recruitment.
It is interesting, and I've mentioned it just before. Like for me, the team that's closest to Newcastle, or was in my mind, would have been someone like Aston Villa in terms of measuring, trying to break through that next level. And obviously Newcastle have just shot straight up, Villa have dropped, but they have got some good players, and it is going to be really interesting to see what happens now that they've got what I think most people deem a top class manager. There's that top level, and then you've probably got the level underneath that. So world class, top class, in my view, because there was a reason Newcastle went after him. Interesting though that he stopped at Villarreal because of Champions League football, and he's now left to go to Aston Villa, closer to a relegation fight than qualifying for Europe.
Very bizarre, isn't it? I don't know what's changed in the last 10 months. But very, very bizarre. Look, he's a good manager. He's a good manager, and he has unfinished business in the Premier League. Just because he kind of, maybe you could say, he failed at Arsenal doesn't make him a bad coach in any way, shape, or form. It's a very good appointment for them. Very good appointment. He's not going to be in the dugout on Saturday, of course, thankfully. But hopefully we can. I dare say he'll be in the stands, so hopefully we can welcome him back to the Premier League with a defeat.
It is a brilliant appointment. It's one of ambition, I think, from Aston Villa. Do you think, Sam? Obviously, you're looking from the outside in, but as you say, you've got your family connections there, so I'm sure they'll be able to tell you that the fans' point of view. In fact, my father-in-law to be, he's a Villa fan as well, and I know he's very envious at the whole situation up in Newcastle. He didn't actually want Gerrard sacked, funny enough. But do you think they look at what's happening at Newcastle and the early success they've had on Tyneside, the good start of the season, and they've gone, that's where we wanted to be? That's not good. We've been overtaken by Newcastle, and we sort of had a head start. We spent all this money over the last 3 or 4 seasons. It's not worked out. And do you think that's maybe pushed them to go and look at the top of this list, see someone like Emery and go, right, let's pick up the phone and let's put the feelers out, and it's worked out all right for them?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, they were very ambitious in the names that were being linked, but obviously it's not always going to go your way. I think Pochettino and Tuchel were very dismissive of Aston Villa because they've clearly got the head screwed on. So it is an ambitious appointment. They probably are looking at us with a bit of envy. But what you still got to remember is, for ourselves, it's still very early days. I mean, as great as it started, I'm still not expecting us to be in the top 4 come May, which is fine. Because it's been a fantastic start to the season. We're still only 1 defeat in, and that was questionable at the very least. So it's been a remarkable start. If we can still be in the mix for top 6 come mid to late January, then it could be a very exciting end to the season. But I still think we'd be nailed on for 7th, 8th place now, probably 7th.
I don't know. I'm not yet removing my end of season prediction. Or
You said 11th.
I know, but you know what it is? It's that old pessimistic part of me as a Newcastle fan that's just, keep my feet well on the ground, and we'll see what happens. And I'll be happily proved wrong. Top 7, of course, I would love that. I'm just remaining a little bit grounded with the whole situation. That's the message from Eddie Howe and Callum Wilson as well. Game at a time. Be interesting though, Sam, if they do finish in the top 7, top 6, and what that means for the summer, because that then means European football, but it means playing, weekend, midweek, weekend. And suddenly the plans, I would imagine, in the transfer window would have to be changed, because your squad goes from needing to be strengthened to really then needing more bodies in to cope with, the inevitable injuries that you get and tiredness from playing that many games week in, week out.
Yeah, we'll need more than Vernon and Anita this time. That was the big mistake last time around, wasn't it? The first team was there, wasn't it? We had an amazing first team: Kabai, Demba Ba, Ben Arthur, Cisse, Tiote. But there wasn't really much to come off the bench, and then you go into Bruges with both Amiobis and Gael Bigirimana, and it's just which is fine, but it's not enough to maintain a solid league position as well as a European Cup run, is it? But the squad would definitely need to be strengthened. We need a lot more depth. We're still a bit light in certain areas, and we're still a couple of transfer windows away from really getting to where we want to be squad-wise, aren't we? So it might be a case of too much too soon, but I don't think it will hurt us too much. But we've got to get there first. We're in a nice place at the moment where we're winning games and we're all like, what's this feeling? It's brilliant. And just before, like, the expectation inevitably starts to heighten.
Well, one of the interesting feelings I got watching that Spurs game was when they pulled that goal back from Harry Kane. The Newcastle of old, the Newcastle United fan of old, you would sit there and you're thinking, goodness me, this is going to end 3-2. You're watching every attack like with your hands over your eyes. But I never really felt all that threatened watching the game. I never felt worried that Newcastle were going to throw that lead away.
So I did at the time, because, like you say there, it's the old Newcastle fan in me just preparing for impending doom. So at the time when watching the game live, I was like that. But then I sort of watched the highlights back, the extended highlights back the next day, and it was a bit like, I don't know what I was worried about, because it was, in essence, pretty comfortable towards the end. When you're playing a top 3 side away from home, it was a lot more comfortable than what it should have been.
Yeah, 100%. And it goes down to the little things that the defense are doing. Yes, they like to play it out from the back, but there was instances towards the end of the game where they were literally just booting the ball away. Under previous managers, it wasn't, those things weren't done. And it's just those little things where when it needs to, just get that ball out. I mean, Shelby had a good couple of whacks up the field just to waste a bit of time. And it's not pretty on the eye, but it's important. It wastes time. And I think that what's really good to see from Newcastle, they've kind of got everything down to a T. Their game management under Eddie Howe is absolutely spot on.
Yeah, a lot more solid than what it was. And that's when you want to chuck Chris Wood on, I suppose, when things aren't going to be pretty and you have to see a game out, and you do maybe have to lump it forward on the odd occasion and play it in the corner. That's when Chris Wood does actually come in handy.
I thought he was so important. His cameo was so important against Spurs. He drew the foul. He won a few knock-ons. Like that for me. I know he was only on the pitch 7 minutes, but probably the most important 7 minutes I think he's had it. He's played for Newcastle. I know he scored a couple of important goals, but for me, as I said on Monday's episode, this is the biggest win under Eddie Howe, in my opinion. It's something that I think is going to just take Newcastle onto that next level. So for him to have a role in securing those 3 points with the things he did, I just got to give him a round of applause for getting stuck in and really playing what I think was a crucial role.
Yeah. And probably them 7 minutes with Chris Wood come on was a big contributing factor as to why we were so comfortable in the end. I mean, I know the defence were amazing, in particular, Botman, Schär, Trippier's effortlessly class again, playing some of the best football of his career. Makes you wonder why Spurs ever got rid of him in the first place. Botman and Schär are looking absolutely phenomenal. A really, really good pairing. The old question marks about Schär's ability to play in the flat back four are just completely forgotten almost now, aren't they? And Botman, like, to be honest, like I knew he would. He just looks like our Vincent Company for the next 10 years. If we can get to where, the owners and fans aspire to be, he could be with us and a future Newcastle captain.
Looking at the side that started against Spurs and the side that may start against Aston Villa, like you said, we don't think Eddie Howe will change too much. He doesn't like a winning side. So he doesn't like he loves a winning side. Doesn't like to change a winning side.
Yeah.
There. Everyone loves a winning side, Sam. Nick Pope, Trippier, Schär, Botman, Burn with the defence. Now, Burn's always the question mark, and for the last few games, I've advocated getting him out of the starting 11. I mean, again, against Villa, he's going to be up against some very tricky wingers, some good players. But given what Eddie Howe's done in recent games, he's not listening to me. He's gonna keep that back four exactly the way it is. And you know what? Dan Burn against Spurs, I thought was really good. He has had a few ropey games, in my opinion, in recent weeks, but the last two games, Everton and Spurs. Sorry, I think he's done really well, and I think he'll be starting against Villa.
Yeah, he's played with intelligence, hasn't he? Because he's obviously at 6'7", big lumbering centre back. He's not going to be the most paciest of left backs, is he? So he's played with a lot of intelligence, reads the game very well, and has been able to neutralise a lot of the threats coming from out wide. It's going to be a big task. Leon Bailey's playing very well again now since Gerrard's left, and the shackles are off almost. So that's going to be a very interesting matchup. I'm expecting him to play as well. It's harsh on Matt Targett, of course it is, but it's the way Howe is. Once you've earned the shirt, you keep it until you've done something to really put the mockers on. So fair play to Burn. He's been incredible. I mean, it still would be harsh for Gareth Southgate to completely overlook him, to be honest, as a centre-back for the World Cup, given the lack of depth that... Well, I say lack of depth. Could anyone confidently name a real strong English centre-back pairing now without any question marks? I don't think so.
No, but we know what Gareth Southgate's like. He's only going to take players that he's had before, isn't he? And as much as Dan Burn has impressed this season, and I'm hearing the calls as a bit of a wild card, he's not getting an England squad. He's not even getting.
No, he's not. But I'd sooner have him every day of the week and twice on Sundays over Tyrone Mings.
Well, we'll get on to Tyrone Mings in just a moment. Although he was getting a lot of praise for his performance against Brentford, but I still think Callum Wilson will take him to the cleaners if they are facing up on Saturday. Let's just talk about Newcastle's midfield though first. Sam started with Sean Longstaff, Bruno, and Willock. Bruno all being well, he'll start. Question marks for me though over Sean Longstaff, and I know there was plenty of praise for him against Spurs, but I just don't think he's done enough to be a guaranteed starter in this side, even though Newcastle are winning. And people will be, going at me and saying, you're being too critical. But I just think if you're looking for a weak link in that midfield, I think he's it, because he just takes too much time on the ball. And he's been fortunate in recent games that the teams haven't punished him. He's lost it, but the defense has stood strong, or the opposition just haven't taken advantage. There will come a time when he loses it and the opposition score, and it could prove to be a really crucial goal. It might not happen towards the end of the season. Newcastle going for top 4, and that's when it happens. Whatever. I just think, he needs to work a little bit faster on the ball. He takes too much time. I would take him out against Villa.
I take your point, but I've always defended Sean Longstaff, and I will continue to do so. Sean grows into a game. I 100% take your point, because it's true, it does happen, and it did happen under Steve Bruce as well. Whenever Sean Longstaff seemed to lose the ball because he dawdled on it a bit too long, the opposition would go and score. But that hasn't been happening because our defence is 10 times better, because, you know, there's actual work being done on the training ground. Almiron's goal against Spurs wouldn't have happened without Sean Longstaff.
100%, 100%. Don't get me wrong. You know, I'm happy he's got a new contract, and I'm happy he's part of this journey, because he is a talented player. You know, those links to Manchester United all those years ago didn't come just out of thin air. You know, they were deserved. You know, and that injury rocked him, and he has got back to a certain level, and he is a good player. You know, he played well against Arsenal, the last home game of last season, and he did well actually towards the end of last season.
He did,
but I just think there's going to come a time when it's really going to cost Newcastle, because I think actually the frustrating thing is that's the only part of his game I think that needs improvement. He can pick a pass, he gets stuck in, he covers a lot of ground, but the one real weakness in his game is actually a massive weakness. Giving the ball away in the middle of the park is going to cost you at some point. So hopefully, you know, that he grows out of that and he eradicates that from his game. It's, you know, I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that happens. But right now, he is doing it too often. And you do look at Villa, and you think if their players get onto him, you know, they've got a decent enough midfield, they've got players who can counter, they could be at the team that capitalizes.
Yeah, of course, Villa will have Douglas Luiz available now after they won the appeal against his suspension. I'll have no issue if Sean Longstaff is in the starting 11 on Saturday, but I don't disagree with the point you've made. It's been a long road back for Sean since he obviously burst onto the scene with Rafa, and, like you say, the calls from Man United for a £50 million move. He's still probably nowhere near valued at £50 million these days. But he's getting there. He's getting back to where he was, being fit, injury free, and we've seen what Eddie Howe can do with Joe Linton, with Miggy Almiron, your man, with Fabian Schär, who was out the door if Steve Bruce would have stayed. You know, there's a lot to be said for the improvement and what Eddie Howe can get out of his players. So I don't see why he can't improve a bit more and iron out these kind of issues in his game. But I think there are a lot of positives with Sean as well. He goes under the radar a little bit because he's an easy target for criticism, especially when there's no one else really left to criticise at the moment because things are going quite swimmingly. But I'm a Longstaff fan. I think he's. I know he's not a kid anymore, but I still don't quite think he's fully there yet, and I still think there is some improvement to be had from him, and I'll have no issue if he's in the starting 11, nor will I if he's not. If we have Joe Linton, it will Shelvey be back as well now, so we've got a full complement back. So
yeah, that's
it could be John Joe and the two Brazilians. It could be John Joe Bruno and Joe Willock, who's again needs a goal to really cement his brilliant form at the moment.
I would remove. I'd take Longstaff out. I'd bring Shelvey into that side, alongside Guimaraes, and alongside Willock, I think. And then I would leave Joe Linton up there with Almiron and Wilson. That would be my team against Villa.
That surprised me somewhat. You know, I was expecting Murphy to come out against Spurs, but I thought I would have had Ryan Fraser in there. It surprised me a little bit, to be honest, to see Joe Linton kind of. I wouldn't say he was completely, totally out on the left wing, was he? He did kind of.
He was everywhere. Like
he was everywhere.
Even being up that far up the pitch, he was still getting back to his own box and getting a foot in. The engine on that man is unbelievable. Like he's just a beast. Look, what more can you say about him? Every podcast, Newcastle United podcast, has probably said all the positive things you can say about Joe Linton, and sat there and said how baffled and amazed we are at his turnaround. But I thought against Spurs, he just re-cemented why he is, for me, probably the third or fourth name on that team list if fit. He's starting every game if fit.
Yeah, and I think you're right. He probably will be back out on that left-hand side again, wouldn't he? But fully expect him to be everywhere. Him against Leon Bailey should be a good match with Dan Burn kind of tucking in at left back again. It's going to be interesting, and the battle in midfield, which is obviously so key, that we wouldn't always win these battles in midfield, and we do consistently now, because I know we're still, James Maddison links aren't going away anytime soon, and we could maybe still, of course, we could do with one more in there, but the strength in that midfield now is absolutely superb.
What's interesting, and there were a lot of calls over the weekend about how Newcastle have got the best midfield in the Premier League by some, and yet it's not really consistent midfield, is it? Because of the injuries and because of fitness. And we're talking here, and I'm saying, well, for me, Sean Longstaff could possibly come out, Shelby could come back in, and I do think when Shelby is fit and match fit, and there's a big difference, I think he'll be back in that side. So there's another change, and yet a lot of people are sitting here saying, have Newcastle got the best midfield in the Premier League? And it probably just goes to show just how well everybody in that pool is doing.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know about you, but when the lineups came out at 3:30 on Sunday afternoon, I mean, when you look at the Spurs side, you obviously get past Son and Kane, who are world class. There wasn't a lot else in that Spurs lineup to be overly intimidated by, was there? I mean, Oliver Skipp's not going to charge you to a Champions League place, is he?
But isn't it funny, because I'm looking at there, and yes, okay, you went off skip up, Bazuma, big money signing, Benteke has done well. A year ago, you would look at that and you'd be thinking, oh goodness, I know we didn't have all the players there, but actually, when you look at Newcastle's starting 11, only Guimaraes in that midfield is a new signing, and I get what you're saying. I think part of it is really down to the confidence you're feeling that Newcastle are going to go and give people a game. The lack of fear. I think obviously there is the quality in midfield that makes you look at the opposition lineup and go, eh. But I think a lot of it is actually down to you're not feeling fear anymore when you look at a team sheet of the opposition.
No, and the addition of Bruno could never be underestimated, because he would get into any team in the Premier League, any team, Man City, Liverpool, Man United, he would walk into their team. So that obviously goes a long way. I mean, I hope he's had a good night's sleep this week.
I doubt it. Come on, you've got kids, that he's not going to have had a good night's sleep, especially not with a newborn.
No, I know, but I don't know. He might get lucky. I'm sure. I mean, these footballers are millionaires. They can afford help, can't they?
Just a big mansion. He's in the other end of the house having a nice kip.
Exactly.
Did you get a bit emotional at that post game interview with Callum Wilson and Bruno Guimaraes? Did it pull on the heartstrings a little bit?
What did you say? I've got kids, so I've been there. I mean, I haven't played football 48 hours later. But fun fact, when the day my firstborn was born, we beat Villa 2-0. That was back in the Championship. So Henry Lansbury and all that carry on. Yeah, it was a lovely interview, though, wasn't it? And we've had some great ones down the years, like the Longstaff ones after that, the Man United win, and Bruno comes across as such a genuine, honest guy, and he looks just the complete perfect footballer on and off the pitch, doesn't he? And we're so lucky to have him, especially when we did get him. No relegation release clause. He's obviously now, because he's just starting to get the attention of the more widespread media, teams are starting to take notice of Newcastle now. We're currently sat in the top 4 places. So, of course, he's going to attract interest from the so-called bigger boys, but it wouldn't surprise me to see us tie him down with a more longer-term contract and for him to be the club's top earner.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Like you say, he's the cornerstone, isn't he, of what Newcastle are trying to achieve. Him and Trippier set the bar for the quality you're going to expect, I think, in the windows to come. And as well, if you're going to keep him here, you're going to have to buy similar quality to him as well, and that's not going to be easy to do. But it's certainly going to be exciting to see the kind of players they come into match, his ambition and his quality. Let's get on to Miguel Almiron. He did text me after the Spurs game about
Good.
the potential of joining the Miguel Almiron fan club. Are you going to hand your application in?
Possibly. I love being proved wrong about a player. I absolutely love it because it means that Newcastle are doing well. He needed to add consistency and more goals to his game, and he's doing that now, isn't he? And he's won us games. He's won us these tight games where, you know, they've been 1-0, there's just been a goal in it, and he's winning us matches, which he hasn't done before, really, has he? So to see him play well consistently, get goals, it's just great to see. It really is. What can't happen now, obviously, is that he goes missing for the next 6 games. But that goal against Spurs on Sunday was just like, you know, if you were to say to someone, like, draw me a typical Mo Salah goal, that was what Miggy scored on Sunday, wasn't it? It was absolute class. Started off with Sean getting there with the high press and intercepting, and then Miggy battled through a couple of players and slotted it coolly with his left foot past Hugo Lloris, who had a bit of a stinker on Sunday. But yeah, Miggy's been fantastic. And to be honest, I'm expecting him to sign a new contract now soon. I don't think that news will be really far off, because in the summer I was saying that you've either, because he's been here a few years now, you've either got to offer him a new deal or sell him while he still has value. I would have sold him, but thank goodness we didn't.
Yeah, thank goodness they weren't listening to you, Sam. I always had the faith. You mentioned there the fact though that what he can't do is now go missing, and it goes back to something I was asking you or saying before about Newcastle. You're not having that fear when it goes into match days, whereas last season before, you were always thinking especially against the top sides, oh goodness me, this is where Newcastle are going to trip up. But there's just something when you look at Newcastle and when you consider what Miggy's done as well. I've got no fear that Miggy's form will drop off. Yeah, he might not score against Villa, but I think the performance levels will stay, and I think Newcastle's performance levels are going to stay. Or have we gone past the point now where we just expect Newcastle to mess up? Have they done enough this season to now you can see actually they're consistently performing at a good level, and you know there is no fear that they will mess up. Slip up's different, but mess up is the question.
I don't know. You still might have the Palace and Bournemouth performances at the back of your head, which, especially Bournemouth, was a bit flat, wasn't it? I know Palace, we didn't get the VAR decision, but still that was a bit flat as well, wasn't it? But we still come out of the game with a point. We just shouldn't go. We shouldn't lose a game at St James's Park anymore, especially after we've already played City at home. Past the point, no, because it's football. It's just the nature of the beast, isn't it? There's always going to be a game or a performance that just doesn't quite click. So maybe I'm being just a bit pessimistic, but realistic at the same time, because that's just the nature of the game. No game is a foregone conclusion, especially in the Premier League. So I don't know. I still get nervous before every match day, no matter what. Especially with games like this, which I just want to win more than anything. Not because it's against a particularly brilliant side, but it just gives me a quiet life for the next 7 days.
Yeah, I was going to say, what happens if Aston Villa manage to beat Newcastle? What does that mean for your household?
Me and my lad will just go out for a bit. Just leave it to it.
And on that, how is Saturday's game going to go? What's your result prediction?
I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. I think Villa will score, but I think we should have enough in the tank to pick up the 3 points. It's going to be a tough game, this. If Gerrard was still in charge, I'm adamant it would have been a bit of a rollover and we could have been looking at 3-0, something like that. But now there's that new caretaker manager bounce that they've got, and they're not a bad side on paper either. They have got some good players. Danny Ings and Watkins, they're no mugs up front, so it's going to have to be another good defensive display, which of course we can do. Botman's been superb, Cher's been superb, Trippier leader, and Burn's been great too, as you say, and Nick Pope, when called upon, has done the business, hasn't he? But I'm hoping and praying, and I'm fairly confident we can see out and get another 3 points.
I'm going to go for a 3-0 win to Newcastle United.
Wow.
I'm riding that wave of optimism.
Yeah, but it's Newcastle United. Just when you start to ride that wave, then you just get kicked between the legs very firmly, don't you? So I just hope that doesn't happen this week.
Yeah, well, I think Newcastle are going to win. I'm not at the game, unfortunately. I love when Newcastle play Villa, but I'm not at the game. So I am spending the weekend with the in-laws, though. So if we do lose, like
any flower shows this week?
Not this week. No, not this week. Thankfully, it's, yeah, we're not. Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up. No flower shows this week. Hopefully, just a couple of pints in the pub and checking the phone and seeing Newcastle have beaten his beloved Aston Villa, which they're going to do. They are going to do.
I hope so.
Well, Sam, thank you very much for popping on to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It is much appreciated. You guys watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. To you guys listening on the podcast channel, please remember to like and follow and leave us a rating and review, and check out Sam's podcast as well. This is my final match preview for a couple of weeks. Next week, Gibble will be back with Aaron, and the week after that as well.
Have you told everyone why it's your last show for the next couple of weeks?
I told them on Monday. So, yes, I'm getting married a week on Saturday. So, I'm taking.
Are you going to have a shave before the big day?
Don't worry, I'm all booked in. By the time you lovely listeners listen to this podcast, I will probably be in the chair getting a shave because I'm getting it done on Thursday morning. So, thank you for reminding me, Sam. But it's been booked in for a little while now.
Good.
I know. Hey, this is taking a long time to get to this length.
I'm looking out forward to Envy, to be honest. I'm still on Movember from last year.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's getting cut, so don't worry. Mine's getting cut, so don't worry about that. But there you go. A little bit of moving away from Newcastle United. We're so happy we can talk about anything on this podcast. The joys of the impact of Newcastle United, right?
Yeah. Anything. Dishwasher loading techniques, wedding days, honeymoons, anything.
There we go. And well, that's been Everything is Black and White podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in, and head over to chroniclelive.co.uk. And once again, thank you very much for Sam filling in for Gibbo. Enjoy the rest of your week.